All right, let's get started. Hello and welcome everyone to this lovely session that we've got here for you. We're going to be talking about a topic that everyone has questions about, and that is the future of retail, understanding the big industry trends and D2C commerce. And who better to have on the panel than Bharati and Vaishali with me? It's such an honor to have Vaishali over here. Vaishali is the co-founder and head of growth and brand marketing at mCaffeine, India's first caffeinated personal care brand for the last 6 years. She leads brand growth, marketing, D2C technology, consumer marketing, and a lot more. Lovely to have you here, Vaishali.
Thank you.
And along with that, awesome. And along with that, we have Bharati, who's the country head and director of Shopify India and SEA. She's a consumer internet and retail leader with a deep experience in building and scaling both online and offline retail businesses. Her earlier experience was in strategy consulting and investing, followed by a decades deep worth of operating experience in India's startup ecosystem. She spent nearly a decade here and has turned around P&Ls at both brick and mortar retail chains as well as e-commerce platforms. Such an honor to have you here, Bharti.
Thank you, Vanshika. Looking forward to it.
Awesome. Lovely. Let's get started. First question, I will direct it towards Bharti. So D2C, right? Traditionally, when it started off, it was always website first, right? But now it's moved into marketplaces and even offline. There are some amazing brands that you see in shopping malls and airports and so many other places. Can you help our audience understand why omni-channel marketing and distribution in this way has been picking up over the last couple of years?
Yeah, absolutely. I think D2C has really come of age, no, especially in India and especially in the last 2 to 3 years. And Vaishali probably tell us a lot more about how it was before the last 3 years and when she, as a pioneer in the market. But really, the idea of D2C first started in America, right, where it was really about selling directly from your website. And I think we didn't quite know it, but from day zero in India, that's not been the case. It's been more deep first, right? And there's a couple of reasons why. I think we took embrace the idea of D2C or selling from your website much earlier. In terms of how developed our retail market is. Like when we look at markets like North America, they're very deeply organized on the offline retail front as well. They have very evolved online channels, including marketplaces as well. That is still forming and shaping in India. The second important reason to consider is that India is a very large retail market, but it's also a very dense retail market, right? And as someone who's like been a fan of Indian retail since the early 2000s and followed organized retail in its journey and then e-commerce, right? Vanshika, you and I as customers, we never shop from one place, right? No matter how much
Yeah.
Let's take grocery, right? Like I think we still like to go to the Sabzi Mandi when we first started shopping at the big bazaars. When we started shopping at the big bazaars and then we went online, we still like to try like the local Kirana on the phone, his little app that's trying to put itself together, as well as the new, Swiggies and big baskets, right? So I think as Indian consumers, we always like to shop across multiple channels. What D2C in India has done in the last, I'd say, 5 to 7 years has given brands a chance to start online, use feedback loops that are much faster, much more effective to learn quickly on what product works. Why do your consumer likes you? Who is this consumer? How likely is he or she going to come back to you? What more does he or she need from you? And then take it to channels where the exact same information is much harder or more expensive to get, right? But eventually, each brand, I think in any market, and especially in India, water will find its level. You will find the happy mix of the right set of channels that work for you as a brand. Some will continue to be only website. I think we'd rarely come across that in India. Some will continue to be website dominated, and many will move on to be, what the market is, which is really still fundamentally offline.
Yeah, that is so true. And you've raised some really interesting points about consumer psychology, what we're used to, and how it's changing, and how we as consumers are evolving to keep up with this whole omni-channel experience. And I think that's a perfect leeway into the question that I had in mind for you, Vaishali. You've been leading brand marketing, growth, technology, so many things at mCaffeine. What's the one secret to cracking online selling? I mean, so many brands are struggling in so many are waiting for that one snippet from this session that will open their eyes to something new. So, what's your secret? What has worked at mCaffeine?
I think honestly, there's not one area, one thing which builds a brand and builds a business. There are multiple things, but I think the primary and the fundamental points which we follow at mCaffeine, which we practice rigorously at mCaffeine, is knowing our customers, engaging with our customers. India has evolved as a market in the last decade, and from shopping, as Bharti mentioned, from shopping at Big Basket to moving to Amazon, Nykaa, and then brand websites, it has been a journey for an Indian consumer. So for brands to understand and build a brand into a business, it is extremely important to understand what the customers want. Why do they want the products? Why do they need a brand? Where are they actually shopping for that brand or product? And how do they discover that product? So all the fundamentals of your business gets answered by your consumer itself. From the point that you can improve your packaging a bit, you can probably give this in a pump or this in a tube or a jar, to the point that I need your product in the retail store just near my house, because I think it becomes easier for me to access make the brand accessible. I need the brand probably if I'm using a product every morning, and if it gets over, I don't want to wait for another 2 days while I order online. If it's an option, why can't I just go near a shop in the building and just get it from there? So all these answers fundamentally are answered by your consumers if you are closely connected to them. So I think, and this is something which I feel a lot of younger brands in the early stage, miss this point, and they probably start engaging with the consumer in the later stages. But from the first day itself, from what our consumers want, and how best we can market it, and where best can we place it with respect to distribution, I think our consumers have helped us. So I feel that connecting with the consumers, knowing your consumers, is the prime most thing, and one of the, I think, golden secrets of building, a fabulous brand.
Yeah, I think both of you are totally saying the same thing, is understand your consumer, understand what they want, understand how they will buy, where they will buy. And that's so important in this D2C setup. I mean, it has been talked a lot about already everywhere. And just hearing it from two industry experts just reaffirms how important such a small thing seems when, you're growing a business that's going to last for decades. Bharti, I mean, I have a question that's been on my mind for a while. And, while I was reading out your intro, as well as, reading up about you, I see you've worked across, like you've done brick and mortar, retail, e-commerce, D2C. You come in with so much industry experience. What are some struggles that you see D2C brands facing as they try and, grow from a business into a brand? And feel free to add in your views in terms of the technology as well as the logistics side standpoint on that. Would love to hear from you.
Yeah, look, like any other business, right? Like for any entrepreneur, I think every day is a new day. What you've done the previous day is written away, and then you start from zero again, and you build and hope to build something better than yesterday. That applies to D2C too. Nothing comes easy. But if I were to focus on a few practical things, especially to the two things you raised on technology and logistics, in my experience speaking to founders, and by the way, like you said, while my experience is diverse, it also means I've pretty much made every mistake out there. So feel free to hit me up to know what not to do when building something in Indian e-commerce. But I think on the technology side, I find three things, all right, that brands and founders really struggle with. On day zero, deciding that you're a brand and you're not a platform. So your strength is in building the brand and not in building the technology, right? And I think now for 7-8 years, there's been pretty solid answers to that problem in the market. But a lot of us come from technical backgrounds in India, or we're surrounded by folks who are in tech. And I have to tell you, it's very unusual versus other markets I see where this is not even a question. But I think given the environment we thrive in, we tend to feel like, oh, maybe I should just spend time building like my own website, and then I'll do this integration because it'll be special in this one way. But you know what? You're fighting many, many battles on day zero. So I
Yeah.
remember you're building a brand and not a platform. And so focus on the brand, focus on the product that becomes the brand, the consumer insight, the branding, the marketing versus the technology. It's a decently solved problem. I mean, mCaffeine is testament to it. I think they've been on the Shopify platform for many, many years now. The second point at which I think founders struggle on technology is when to buy what, right? So you started, and the moment you get started, there are like 20 people talking to you about, hey, you should use this for retention, you should use that consumer database, you need an OMS now, you need to integrate with your ERP if you're a traditional brand, otherwise you don't know what's happening to accounting. I'd say listen to yourself, and look at people who've done this before you and ask them at what scale they made these decisions and what went right and what went wrong. No one got everything right. And you really don't need everything on the thali on day one. No one can eat a full thali, right? So pace yourself on what you choose to buy when it comes to the technology. And the third thing that I think people get caught up in is they feel like there is this one more insight that'll come if only I had this beautifully integrated platform and everything spoke to each other. You know what? That probably moves the needle from 88 to 89%. It doesn't really materially change your answer if you're doing the fundamentals right. So don't get too caught up with, hey, because my CRM is not talking to my order management system on a real basis, I don't exactly know what to do. There's a time for everything. And it's okay to phase it out and deal with minimal resources or a finite set of resources and pace yourself on these two things, right? Both on what you buy and how much you integrate and want everything to look beautiful. Honestly, I've never seen a system that works well that looks beautiful right?
Yeah.
On the logistics side, it's a much more solved problem today, I'd say. I don't think people wake up today and say, hey, I'm going to write my own payment system or my own logistics system if I'm in a commerce business. I think the one thing I'd say is the tough choice today is how do you optimize for conversion and so replicate your when it comes to product with optimizing for working capital. I think, again, this is a journey. Just because the other brand raised capital and they're in 10 fulfillment centers and so they're going to deliver faster, you can't do it today, right? It is a trade-off versus working capital, and it's okay. And again, it's not a trade-off at a brand level, it may be at a SKU level. So be smart about experimenting, learning, making these decisions versus feeling like the pressure to do 0-1 because that's become the new benchmark in the market. I think customers are quite discerning. So I wouldn't put that pressure on myself right away.
Yeah, that's very well said. And, I think every entrepreneur's journey is so special because you learn so much in the 0 to 1 phase, which you then take forward. And these little things that you mentioned, I mean, they really add to the experience, to the brand, and everybody's going to make mistakes, right? Like you said, I think just dealing with it, learning how to firefight and moving on is the best way forward for entrepreneurs that are looking to build global businesses. Moving back to the customer side, because I think, like we figured out already, customer is key, customer is king. Vaishali, I mean, customer experience is essential, right? Like D2C relies so much on it. What are some technology assets that brands can use or you have used at mCaffeine to kind of push the boundary on customer experience to make the entire from ordering to delivery experience a great one?
So I think, as Bharti mentioned in the last question, I totally, support that and relate to that piece. We are a brand, and our job is to create the brand and the best product for the consumer. We are masters of that, and I think we should not be changing our core objective as a brand from giving the best experience in a bottle to a consumer to actually developing technologies. And that is where I think a lot of young people, they look out for building technologies themselves rather than looking out for effective ways or efficient ways to build technology stacks. And as the Indian consumer is also evolving, they want a better experience, they want a better functionality. Now, as brands, I in the past 6 years, I think having platforms like Shopify and a brilliant partner team with it has actually helped us build our D2C experience from making a purchase easy for a consumer to actually making it accessible, making that information accessible to a consumer that, okay, your product has been dispatched and you will get it in 2 days. It's not easy for, a brand,
Yeah.
FMCG brand to do that. But Shopify has made it very easy. And along with that, I think once you integrate yourself with Shopify, a lot of applications, lot of other technologies are something which come as a guiding tool to you. So like we in the early years, we didn't have a proper SaaS tool to actually reach out to our customers via email, SMS, and other mediums. That is where we got to know about certain apps which were present on Shopify, and it was like a 5-minute job for us to plug and play, right? And similarly, if a consumer is looking out for checking here, how many days will the product be delivered? There's a small app which we just integrate. A person enters the pin code and the person can get an understanding. Yeah, that's from where in how many days will I get the product? So I think having Shopify with us, our technology journey has honestly become really easy. We are not technology experts. We don't understand JavaScripts. We don't understand HTMLs. We understand what is salicylic acid and what is coffee and what is green tea, and that's what we are best at. So I think firstly, I would like to mention to everybody that use the stacks, the technology stacks, which platforms and partners like Shopify has built for us. Second, I feel, I think when you are very close to your consumer, you're also understanding a lot of trends. Being on the platform, setting up your analytics, if you're on Shopify or if you follow Google Analytics, you need data, and D2C, as we mentioned earlier, provides you ample amount of data. So as we, study the data, what our consumers are searching for, consumers are asking for, certain features in the current state of building businesses and brands have become very important. Like people now want a live support. So on web, chats have become extremely important for us. We are implementing that with one of the partners in with Shopify, line chat. So we are working with them to build our web solutions, our on-site solutions to actually make a better support for the consumers. And in that also, I think as we are moving faster, probably adding vernacular content for consumers, because as a brand, we are reaching out to a consumer sitting in Bangladesh, in West Bengal, in Tamil Nadu, in Punjab, and in Maharashtra. So for us, it becomes very important to cater to all the needs and in all languages a consumer is asking us the question in. So features like that become very important as you're gradually moving up. Then features like video commerce, as consumers are evolving, they need more education, they need more engagement. And fundamentally, as a brand, I feel that engagement and education via product, via content is extremely important to build a great brand marketing playbook. And that is where I think in this stage of brands, how well you engage your consumers on the website becomes very important. And these are the basic examples of how we as a brand evolve on technology. And I feel that just we need to consciously listen to our consumers, understand why a consumer is not able to understand the product, to why a consumer is not able to transact on the website. And the answers of what all technologies do we need to implement on the website would come itself to you. So a lot of our features on the website are suggested by Shopify experts, by partners, and then our consumers. So that is how we build our technology stack. So I think these would be the two approaches I would suggest the young brands to follow and build their technology stacks, but use it efficiently rather than building a proper in-house technology teams or a massive technology stacks. I think that definitely moves your focus and your attention from building a great brand and product to technology. So that is something we have eventually been following since the very beginning.
That's awesome. And thanks for sharing a first person's perspective, because it gives the entire audience that's here listening to us today exactly what you're doing and how it's applicable in the real world, right? Because a lot of times we read so much on the internet, but we don't know how to apply it. So thanks for that. Really, really insightful, very, very interesting answer. Yeah, Bharti, I've been thinking about this, like recently I've seen so many brands D2C, as well as so many others, go from India abroad and kind of bringing so much that India has to the world, which might not have been possible before. But like we've just seen, I mean, technology is pushing the boundary on everything today. uh, what can they do to create this borderless world in their niche? How do they go about it? If you could share some insights, that would be wonderful, because why not share what India has to the world? Over to you.
Oh, absolutely. I can't wait for this trend to play out, right? Because I really do believe that India has a lot to offer to the world. I think when it comes to cross-border commerce on Shopify from India to the world, I have seen roughly three stages, right? And I'm almost waiting for stage three to happen. I think stage one, Manchika, was, the platform is super easy for you to like start selling
Mm,
in multiple countries. So we actually had in the early stages of Shopify's merchant base growing in India, many drop shippers, right? What we call drop shippers, who basically would know how to identify a product that could sell in the let's say the United States, and would sit here and offer performance marketing services, run their own store, and have it picked up from, let's say, China or a Vietnam and shipped over to the US, right? And that basically just established that, look, you could sit here and run a business from here to the world, from anywhere in anywhere to anywhere else in the world, right? But I think the more emerging trend that I feel is pretty established now is trend number two, which is I'm seeing a lot of brands from India with a very strong Indian aesthetic sell to the Indian diaspora globally. Right. Typically, these would be at a premium price point in India. You could think of many fashion designers in India, a lot of indie brands, and they're pretty strongly profitable niche, growing every year. They know what they're doing. They know which audience they're tracking to, and they will do all the diligence on the ground before they get into the market. So, for example, the UAE and that cohort is a very attractive market in terms of Indian diaspora. Then there's Australia, Canada, and then there's the UK and US. And in each of these markets, based on your category, you have to figure out how you would operate on the ground. How would you make sure your product is there? How would you accept returns and exchange? What we've solved for is it's literally a click of a button to start selling in another country, and the payments and logistics is sorted out for. But you do have to think about, is this relevant to this audience, and what are the logistics of actually selling in that country? How are you going to operationalize that? That's a big emerging trend. In fact, last I checked, I think 1 in 5 merchants in India now sell somewhere globally from a Shopify platform, right? The third trend, which I'm especially really, should I say, passionate to see happen, I was telling Vaishali earlier today that I can't wait for her to do it, is brands that are really India agnostic, right? But happen to be born in India and are selling to the world. I think we're very proud of what Badam has done. Again, as a Shopify merchant, but really like taken the India story of tea, right? Which we should own from India to the world. And no one would look at Vadam and necessarily think this is a brand for Indians. It's really a brand that symbolizes something that is so premium and rich about India that's offered to the world. And I really hope that in the next 5 years, we see more and more such brands emerge alongside the previous ones that serve the Indian diaspora.
Yeah, that's, I think, something I'm also really excited about, because like we're a country of so many different kinds of riches, and what better way than the world to experience it, wherever they are. So well said. And Badam is a perfect example in this instance. I mean, I also personally have a lot of Badam, and I just love the story. I think that's what's like really amazing about the brand, the story, and then obviously everything else that adds on to the experience, being a D2C online brand. Coming to that, Vishali, I don't hear so much conversation around brand marketing and building a brand. And like every time I open LinkedIn, it's someone talking about performance marketing and ROS and all of these fancy terms, right? And I think personally that's an issue, which is why I wanted to have you answer, or at least share your insight into why do you think brand building is not talked about as much, brand marketing, everything that involves building something without, really putting, money everywhere. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this and why do you think it's happening? I'd love to see your perspective.
I think it's a very, very interesting question, first of all, because, fundamentally, I think every discussion uh, internally and externally starts with what are the cats, what is the ROI, right?
Yes.
And I think the Googles and Facebooks of the world are, the hot topics of solving these concerns, or probably, in the future, or how difficult it has become with the recent updates of, Meta and Google. But this is a ever evolving question, and an always asked question, which tops the lists of, I would say, all the funds and investment communities in across I think the industry. And I think the reason is that as a brand starts, everyone focuses on performance marketing. You need to understand if the brand and the product is a product market fit, and that is where performance marketing gives you instant results. It is something which is analytical. If you put in 100 rupees, you understand how much results you're getting, and you can easily understand where the brand is going, how you can optimize. So I think I'd like to firstly mention that it is the stage of the brand which is very, very important. In the early stage, you focus a lot on performance marketing. You start in slow, and that is where you capture into the early adopters, which are very easy to capture via performance marketing as a channel, which comes in the lower funnel, which is known as conversion or the converting funnel for you, the third bottom funnel for you, the different nomenclatures for it. And that is where brands start with. But as a brand grows, as the stage of the brand moves, we need to expand our consumer base, right? And that's the fundamental question every brand faces after a certain stage. And the answer to that is brand marketing. From just putting up an ad and measuring how many customers you get via an app, via that ad is not how you will be able to reach to masses. You need to change the fundamental thought process that I now need to engage with the audiences. I need to capture their mind share. And that is how I will be able to convince them that, okay, is my brand and product relevant in their lifestyle? Can I become their choice for the product they need? And that is where brand marketing becomes extremely important. In a marketing language, we always mention that we need 3 to 7 impressions for a consumer at this stage in this market, in this highly competitive, digital landscape to convert. From, engaging with a consumer to converting, you need this many impressions minimum, so that consumers change their decisions. Consumer consider your brand and then convert. So I think that is something which doesn't give you instant results. You can't capture or engage with the user in the first go. You need to tell a consumer, first of all, that I exist. I as a brand exist. Second, you need to tell them why am I relevant as a brand in their lifestyle. And the third, you need to give them a reason so that they can believe in you and buy. I think, and that's a journey as a brand you need to, you need to have with your consumers. And as a consumer base grows, as you are expanding into masses, your market, your penetration is increasing. I think that is where you're no longer talking to your early adopters who would give you instant results on Facebooks and Googles of the world. You need to now start moving to engage with your consumers, understand and make your consumers understand that what the brand is, what the product is, and then give them a reason to buy and to believe in your product. And that is how a consumer starts to, thinking about the brand, talking about the brand, and then considering the brand and hence purchasing the brand. So it's a journey, and that takes time. And the reason it takes time, a lot of people are focused on performance marketing. If you are doing a digital campaign, or if you're doing a television on the campaign, or if you're doing a print or a radio campaign, the people generally don't opt for it because they will never get the result on that day itself. You do it for a continuous period of time and you will see that the consumers are more reactive to your ads, more engaging to the communications you're sending out on digital platforms. And you will eventually start seeing the optimization and the scale up happening in the brand. But that's a journey for a consumer, and the brands should not expect that journey to be traveled like in a 2 day span. It takes time, and for different businesses, say for example, if I'm a cosmetics or a beauty brand versus I'm a shoe brand versus I'm an apparel brand, the journey periods would be different. So every category, every brand needs to understand what their period is, what the journey with the consumer is, and hence build their you know engagement playbooks, build their marketing playbooks with the consumer. So we always talk about a 3 funnel approach. You make a customer aware, you make a customer consider, and then you help a consumer buy. So these are the 3 stages from top to bottom funnel, which I think gets evolved as you grow from the brand. You start from performance, which is your lower funnel, and then eventually, as you have to scale up, you need to start with making the brand more aware. You need to focus on their awareness, mediums, marketing, and then eventually you need to set up those engines. So I feel that you don't get always that number in the first campaign, and that is the reason people always talk about performance more. And that is, I think, by nature, because you start with performance. Eventually, as the business grows, your focus shifts, and that is where brands start focusing on brand marketing. But I think fundamentally, a lot of brands in India are currently, run by either engineers or CAs. And I think we have, Bharti would relate to me that we are trained to see numbers and, build decisions based on numbers. So performance marketing, is something which gives us more confidence as engineers to take calls on. But I think as you grow as a marketeer, you get more connected to the consumer, you get more connected to the fundamentals of marketing and understand that, okay, you need to take a long-term approach in building the brand. So I think that's the fundamental reason of, people talking more about performance. But I think as you grow as a brand, the question and I think the discussions also eventually shift to brand marketing.
Yeah, very, very well laid out. And I totally agree with you, right? It's a journey, and it's one that will take its own time. And you've raised some really good points about what you can tell and what you can't tell with brand marketing, along with pros and cons. So thanks for the very honest and candid answer, which I'm sure everybody's listening, anybody who's listening would really like to, learn and keep in mind. We're almost at the end of our session. I've learned so much, and I'm sure that everybody who's here has taken away some beautiful snippets. As we wrap up, I just have one final question for Bharti. Everybody talks about this D2C playbook, right? Everybody's writing it, editing it, and creating this thing on the go every day. It's something that's so evolving. But having been in the market and been a part of so many D2C brand successes, what are some things that you'd like to have in the playbook if you were ever to write a D2C playbook?
Oh my God, I feel like I should definitely not contribute to one more playbook in the ether. There are so many. But I'll tell you about a lesson I learned that I think is useful. When you look at these playbooks, it's very tempting to sort of take what resonates with you and quickly try it. I think just take a moment to think about the stage of brand building you're at, right? Or business building you're at. I think it's very important to apply the right playbook tool at the right stage. It's day zero is very different in the world of brand building versus day 100 versus day 1000, right? So that would be my overarching lesson. But to specific areas of the playbook, my favorite actually, Vanshika, has been watching orgs grow, right? How do you bring people together, and who are the absolute roles you need on day zero versus on day 1 versus day 10 versus day 100, right? I think many people get carried away and make some of those decisions wrong. And before you know it, your fixed costs kill you, right? Everything else can be, money you put and take out, like whether it's performance or it's product working capital. But if you take on too many people in the beginning, you don't think through their roles and responsibilities, it sounds like a big company thing, but you really have to focus on the 3-4 roles that move the needle on day zero. And what are you going to add when the time comes? iterate on that, take the time, go and speak to founders who've been on that journey, and they'll tell you that, you can do without an SEO person full time on day one. Start with a freelancer, use a copywriter, etc. And then, at this point, you'll feel like, man, this is too much, and it's really getting close to what I'm doing on a daily basis. So bring someone in full time. So I think focus on the org as a playbook. I think it's really worth it, even if someone's not built it. I don't know if there's one out there. Speak to founders like Vaishali. I'm sure they'll have pearls of wisdom to offer. The second one is around branding. I think Vaishali alluded to it a lot. I feel like there's a lot said about the science of performance. There's very little said about the art of branding and marketing. And yes, because it's an art, it's probably harder to bottle into a playbook. But I do feel, having done this a few times, there are inputs that you can focus on, right? Like, what is the frequency of graphic that you need to put out? How much copy is enough, right? How much do you need to refresh creative? What is reasonable? These are all good lessons to learn from people who've been there before you, and then tweak and tailor to your own story, right? And your stage of business. And the third is definitely ops. I think we all think that somehow we're building a different experience from someone else. But you know what? Even before e-commerce happened and D2C happened, brands were getting built and very successfully in this country. So there's a lot to learn from brands who've scaled on how to run good ops for each channel, especially if you're doing things like distribution, offline, GT from day one. Please learn from people who've been there before you, because those mistakes can be very expensive. So lean on the experience of giants in this country who built distribution out, and they really will help you not make those mistakes in the early days. Those would be my three.
Awesome.
And
Awesome.
just on that point, because while we were building D2C, I think I totally relate to 3 points Bharti mentioned, and I'll just like to add my 2 cents to this piece, which I feel a lot of times people put a second priority to, and that is laying out your story in the best way possible. I think your D2C platform, our D2C platform is the largest platform for us, and we feel that it helps us describe our story as a brand in the best way possible. And a lot of times people forget that, and that becomes extremely important while you're building a brand. Your story needs to be told, and that is where D2C as a platform comes as a fundamental platform to you. Everyone would look for mCaffeine.com before they would go to probably Amazon and Nykaa of the world to understand what the brand is. And I can't tell my brand in just one product page on Amazon and Nykaa. So I think telling your story and setting up the sales for that story is also very, very important, and followed by the service. A great story, a great product which is selling, but a bad service is something which will not help the brand scale. We need to ensure that as we need to give the best experience to our consumer from when they're coming to the website till the consumer is getting the product in the hands, and then if a consumer like the product or not, helping them understand the product, engaging with the product, engaging with the consumer, that becomes extremely important and comes as a part of the consumer service, the customer service, which brands should diligently follow. So I just wanted to add these 3 golden words, which is story, sales, and service, which become extremely important while we are building brand in this digital world, and that will eventually make your brand stand out. And that I just wanted to add that part, so that if anyone is looking out to build.
So good.
We're very glad you added that. Thank you so much, Vaishali and Bharati. It was such a honor and pleasure to hear your thoughts, learn from you, take away all your years of experience in just like 45 minutes. It's been an absolute roller coaster, and I had a great time hosting both of you over here on the Digital Asia stage. So once again, thank you so much. And for everybody that's watching, I'm sure you must have taken at least one, if not like 10 snippets away. Go and share this with the world. Vaishali, Bharati, and I are all on LinkedIn. Do go out, share what you learned, and we'd be more than happy to engage in conversation with you over there from here on. Thank you all so much for watching. Thanks for staying with us, and have a great evening ahead.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thanks so much, Vaishali. Thanks, Vanshika, for having us.
Thanks.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Bart.